Hello, hello, brothers and sisters. Welcome to our show titled Speak of Africa. For the show of today, we're going to talk about a topic which we've talked about in the past, and this is French influence in Africa. Today, we're going to talk about the way the influence of France is waning. Did you know that after colonialism, France is still a neo-colonial power in Africa? Did you know that? Well, if you do not know that, we're going to explain in this video so you see how it works. We've been talking about Francafrique on this show many times. Francafrique, which is just an acronym for France and Africa, it deals with the relationship between France's former colonies like Cameroun, Niger, Burkina Faso, Côte d'Ivoire, Gabon. So there are so many of them, Benign. The relationship. So when most of these countries were about to become independent, France refused to grant genuine independence to these countries. Yes, France played games. At the United Nations, it was decided that most of these African countries should become free, should become independent. But that's what I call the hoax of independence. Francis Charles de Gaulle, who was president at the time, came up with a system to maintain French influence in Francophone Africa. Because they felt like, well, Africa has so many resources. They will not let go of Africa's resources. Africa is France's plantation. Whatever is in the soil of Africa belongs to France. France needs to milk it, get everything out of it. Africans need to get nothing. So in return, France decided that, okay, in order for you to become the leader of any of these newly independent African countries, you have to be a slave of France. You have to be a puppet of France. So France controlled these countries politically, socially, and economically. Economically, France decided that all these countries have to use a currency called CFA. Okay? That's what France decided. They have to use a CFA. So, which means the French Central Bank controlled all these African countries. And most of these African countries were forced to put a portion of their money in the French treasury. Whenever they needed this money, they had to pay as a loan to get their own money. Can you believe it? That's what African countries have been going through under this French regime of Francafrique. Okay? Then, socially, France used the whole educational system to colonize the African mentality. So everything was just messed up. So Africans have never really been free. So this system has been enforced for so many years, but as far back as 2017, the system started unraveling. Okay? It started unraveling. So when President Emmanuel Macron became president in 2017, he decided that he wanted to give a new face to this system, which was set up by Charles de Gaulle. Charles de Gaulle protected most of these African countries. If you are president, like you are president of Cameroon, France chose the president. The people of Cameroon do not have the right to choose their own president. So that's basically what the problem is with Francafrique. This week, Emmanuel Macron is making his final call in Kenya as the president of France. So instead of depending on French former colonies for power, France now is moving to the Anglophone zone in Africa. Kenya is a former British colony. It was not a French colony. Nigeria also was a former British colony. It was not a French colony. But you can see France establishing relationships with Nigeria. In fact, Bola Tinubu, the president, is always going to France on vacation, but we think sometimes it's on secret working visits because France is trying to cajole him, befriend him, so that he can be their puppet. And who is going to lose? The Nigerian people are the one who are going to lose. Who's going to gain? France is going to gain, because that's what France does. Even as we speak, I can tell you that French business interests in Nigeria are very substantial. Some people only see vehicles like Peugeot assembled in Kaduna and other places. But the French influence, the market share in Nigeria is huge. In fact, I was surprised to find out that the French market share in Nigeria is bigger than what obtains in Cameroon. When Cameroon and Nigeria were fighting a war, and I realized that France was not willing to encourage Nigeria to fight Cameroon, I was asking why. La tranquillité des affaires. So France felt that if there's a war, they will lose more. They will lose interest in Cameroon, they will lose interest in Nigeria. So they sued for peace. So this has been tenable for a very long time now. But recently, a lot of Africans have been rebelling. You see countries like Burkina Faso, Niger, Mali. There's a lot of turmoil in most of these countries. Why? Because the people are rejecting France as a former colonial master who is messing up in their affairs. They don't want them anymore. So you ask me why? Because the youth of those countries are frustrated. There's no employment for them. Life is a misery. There's no development. All the resources of the country are siphoned by France or French companies. So very little wealth is left in the country. And most of this elite and the leaders at the top, they steal all the resources and the people have nothing. So they capture the apparatus of state, then the people are left with nothing. The French control the military. In fact, the military in most of these former French colonial countries is a French creation. So their loyalty is to France, not to the citizens of that country. They can kill you in cold blood and nobody will have the right to say anything. That's how it works. In fact, this week we saw a video in La République du Cameroun. A Cameroonian was going to a store to buy some goods and they started beating him. This store was owned by Chinese people. The Chinese people arranged with some Africans to start beating this guy. When you see the pictures, very, very terrible pictures. Because we put so much pressure, we spread these pictures all over the place, we shared them all over social media, it became viral. The pictures went viral. Now the Cameroon colonial system had to take notice and they decided now to incriminate these Chinese entrepreneurs. You come to a country to trade, then you feel superior to the citizens of that country. You make them look as if they are dead. They are the wretched of the earth. That's what happened in Cameroon, in Yaoundé, in Olezua, where this happened. It's very, very sad. Okay? So the people feel that they have the right. Africans are garbage. Okay? The Chinese feel superior to Africans. Africans work for them and they look at Africans like slaves. So how can this be? If Africans were really people who really had their independence, who had sovereignty, this would not be happening. But this is the fate that attends Africans in their own country. Okay? And this is why the African youth is angry. It's angry with France's Francafrique system. Okay? You may ask why? Because the system is not good for them. The leaders of African countries, especially in these Francophone areas, they steal all the wealth. So what do the youth have? The youth now have to die in the Mediterranean trying to cross to go to Europe. When they get to France, France insults them and calls them les immigrés. Il faut qu'ils rentrent chez eux. Okay? So now the people want this stuff to end. They want the Francafrique to end. And I've explained to you why. There's a French song. It's a song by Miraculous. Adieu. We have to say goodbye. France also want to say goodbye to Africa. On a vie, that's the song title. Miraculous. We leave, but we have to say goodbye. France also want to say goodbye to Africa. That's the crisis. In life, you learn to say goodbye. Okay? You learn to say goodbye or you learn to say farewell. Okay? France also want to say farewell. So now you ask yourself, Macron is going to Kenya. Okay, in Kenya now, what's happening? Well, Macron is saying he's resetting the relationship in Africa. Instead of a paternalistic approach, he's going to use trade. Africans are going to trade with France as equals. But do you believe this? We think this is just like whitewashing. It's just a game. What does William Ruto really want from Macron? It looks like he may just want weapons and some military support, because the Kenyans themselves are disappointed in William Ruto. He is a new colonial president. He's a puppet. I think Uhuru Kenyatta was even better. The people are very disappointed in William Ruto. Why is he accepting Macron to come to his country and organize a seminar called Africa Forward? Africa Forward Summit. That's the name of the summit. The summit is taking place now. But do you think this summit will take Africa forward? We think the real name of this summit should be Africa Backward. Because instead of taking Africa forward, what the summit is going to do is going to take Africa backward. That's what we see. And you can see that Macron is just doing this as a survival tactic. So this is Macron's final farewell in Africa. He came in 2017 and he tried to play games, deceive Africans that he has changed, he had a baby face. Some Africans thought that yes, we have a president now who respects Africa. Instead of summoning African presidents to the Elysee Palace, now Macron, like a little boy, goes to Africa to meet them. So that's a big change. But this change is only symbolic. It doesn't really mean much. That's what we want you, our viewers, to understand. Okay? Macron is behaving this way because the world has changed. The world of de Gaulle is not the world of Macron. In the early 1960s, de Gaulle was an emperor. He ruled like a colossus. That's how he handled African countries. He was a colossus who bestride the whole African world. But today, Macron looks like a midget. The African president don't even respect him. Okay? That's really what is happening. Then, of course, on the global stage, there is competition for Africa's resources. There's a new scramble for Africa's resources. So you have powers like the United States of America. You see them fighting for resources in Africa. I give you the example of there's a Trump meeting with some African leaders in the White House. Only a few of them. Even Congo DRC, they have a lot of resources. They are willing to give these resources away to the United States of America. Then, of course, there's competition from Russia. France is facing a steep competition from Russia. Most of these former colonies of France, especially like Burkina Faso, Niger, Mali, Central African Republic, Russia has taken them over. Then even Chad has left the French fold. So there's so much competition that Macron is desperate to do something to recalibrate this French influence in Africa. But are things working? They don't seem to be really working because the African people are frustrated and they want to make amends. So when you see all these countries, the people are frustrated. You take Cameroon as an example. What is happening? In Cameroon, the people are waiting for the sunset of the Biya regime, which is a regime of Francafrique. Biya is supported by France. France chose him as president. Ever since, Biya has lost every election. Even the last election with Issa Chiroma, he lost it, but he still forced his way on the people because he gets French support. That's what is happening. But this week, as we told you, some people believe Biya will reign forever. Biya is not a god. Biya is not a demigod. People look at him like a demigod, but he's not a demigod. He's going to obey the laws of gravitation. He's going to obey the laws of nature. And already what I've been predicting is happening now. This week in May, beware the Ides of May. So many pillars of the Biya regime have collapsed. Cavalier Jibril, the former Speaker of the House of Assembly, has kicked the bucket. This guy is an illiterate. He was a PE teacher, physical education. That's what he was teaching. But Biya brought him to the assembly and now made him the speaker. So he rubber stamps every policy that Biya introduces. He turns it into law. Okay? So for his loyalty, Biya compensated him with a lot of financial goodies. So most of these pillars are dropping because of age. They are obeying the laws of gravity. They are dying, the laws of nature. They cannot live forever. Most of these people thought they could live forever, but they're not going to live forever. They are dying. I said it before. Some people thought they will never die. Kavai Jibril is gone. He's not alone. So many. Even General Mecca, Claude Mecca, we hear he also has died. So this May is like when the Pope went to Cameroon, he just spread the Holy Spirit. And this Holy Spirit has just been killing all these bad people. These are people who have killed Cameroonians, maimed them. They have done bad things to Cameroonians. When the Pope went to Cameroon, it looks like he just poisoned the environment. He used the Holy Spirit to poison the whole environment. Kavai Jibril is gone. He's not alone. What about Nia Jefenji, the president of the Senate? He too is gone. So many of them, those pillars of the Biya colonial regime are collapsing. Then the theory now is their collapse presages the final collapse of Biya himself. Some are even predicting that May is not going to end without us hearing the news of the death of Biya himself. So keep watching. So a new colonial regime like this is not going to last forever. So it is falling apart. So many of these big guys, even the Supreme Court, the guys who made sure that Biya won every election, it too is dead. So I can keep counting, but I'm not happy that they are dying. I'm simply saying that nature is taking them to make room for the young. These are old people who should be in retirement homes, but they don't want to go to retirement. They want to stay and steal all the wealth of the country, then steal the future of their children and grandchildren. This is what they have done. Then they've killed a lot of people in Ambazonia. Because even in Ambazonia today, you still feel the impact of what the Biya regime is doing. Mobile money. One of the entrepreneurs of mobile money was attacked and killed by armed robbers. In the days of Ahijo, we did not have this type of armed robbers. But because of this Anglophone conflict, guns are everywhere, cartridges are everywhere, soldiers are selling their guns and cartridges for money. So the whole area is awash with weapons. So why should it be a surprise when you hear that they have killed an entrepreneur who owns a mobile money outfit? So why should it be a surprise? It should not be a surprise, right? So this happened in Limbe. We used to call it Victoria during my days. This is where Sonara sits, in Limbe, Victoria. This is where they killed the mobile money guy. So you can see what is happening in this part of the world. Okay? Then of course, you see other countries like Ethiopia, Egypt. They are also attending Macron's 2.0 meeting in Kenya. Egypt, Al-Sisi. What do they want? They want help from France. Then of course, Dangote, the big guy of Nigeria, the entrepreneur, he too is there attending. So you can see all these countries are attending. But fire is raging in the countries of the Sahel, Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger. Fire is raging over there. So when you look at what we've presented to you so far in this video, you start asking, what is the solution? Francafrique is not dying. It's simply changing its face. Don't let anybody deceive you. So we're going to present our own analysis now. So what should African leaders prioritize? Politically, they need to work towards genuine democracy. They need to build institutions so that democracy can be guaranteed. Only a system of check and balances will be able to control jingoistic, wild guys who are power hungry. Okay? Second, we need to have economic sovereignty. Our leaders need to prioritize economic sovereignty. We need to do away with the French franc, and we need to have our own currency. I studied economics. I know how money operates. Africa needs to have its own money, not colonial money from France. Because when they have their own money, they can really control their economic destiny. It will be easy for them to invest, and this money will be backed by the buckets of Africa's natural resources. So it's not just paper money that you can print and print and print and print, which is useless. Third, we need to go back to this idea of African nationalism. We need to believe in the idea of being an African. We need to teach our youth the value of nationalism, loving your country, being educated, having skills, so that we don't have to travel to Europe to do better. We need to learn to do better right at home. So those are some of the ideas that I'm analyzing and presenting to you. So my people, you've watched this video to the end. What's your opinion? What do you think about this Francafrique 2.0 of Emmanuel Macron? Emmanuel Macron is leaving the political stage very, very soon. What do you think has been his achievement? Do you think he has really made a difference in the perception or reality of Francafrique in Africa? Some people think yes, some people think no. What is your opinion? So I want to hear from you. Go to the comment section and write what you think, because we want to really hear from you. Francafrique is a dominant theme. It affects Africa politically, socially, and economically. What is your suggestion? Don't just sit and listen to me. You are a participator in this debate. Talk. Go to the channel. There's a comment section. Write your comments so that we can read them and we'll reply. Thank you very much. May God bless you.
Selling a service or a product? Need buyers? Use the African Nation TV as a channel to reach many viewers. Act now and call Prince Ojong at 240-350-1131. That's 240-350-1131. Act today.